Alright gentlemen, it's here per the request of this lovely viewer right here who recommended that I did this video. This is going to be the top 25 gatekeepers in the UFC. The fighters that we like are only somebody because they've beaten these people. And not these people, we're not going to see any of the fighters here on the home screen on this list. We're going to define first what UFC gatekeepers are. For the sake of our conversation, we're going to be dealing in failed title challengers who serve as top-ranked contenders by default, like Diego Lopez, who just lost to Volkanovski and is going to be fighting Gene Silva. He's not there to win that fight. I'm not sure what you guys think about that matchup, but I think he's gatekeeping that contendership so that Gene Silva can beat him and then slide right on into the title picture right after they have Volk fight Pico, Mobzar, Yair, whoever he's going to fight. Nobody really knows. It's up in the air right now. Fighters who never got to belts and hugged the same spot in the rankings for their entire careers. I was going to throw Jack Hermansson on this list, pictured down at the bottom of the screen right there, but the game ends for these gatekeepers whenever they get flatline KO'd. That is, if they're a person who doesn't regularly get knocked out. If you're a striker-grappler hybrid like Gunnar Nelson or like Jack Hermansson who wins decisions and doesn't sustain a great amount of damage in the fights that they do win, and whenever they lose, sure they may get beat up, but it's nothing career-altering. A brutal knockout can change the course of their ship. If you're a guy like Michael Johnson who's been known to get knocked out and then come back and still compete at a decently high level, you may be featured on this list. No spoilers. We're also going to be talking about veterans who are used to build up young talent. Stipe is the first example that I could think of, but he was actually the champion whenever he lost to Francis Ngannou, and he had beaten him before. There's better examples. We'll talk about them. The first fighter that we're going to discuss is going to be Austen Lane. This is the training wheels heavyweight. He fraud-checked Rebellis to Spain. He built up Justin Tafa and Mario Pinto. That was his last fight. He got knocked out by Mario Pinto on March 1st. He's making a relatively quick turnaround for a KO TKO loss. It wasn't that bad. He can get right back at it. He's going to be christening Vitor Petrino as a heavyweight this Saturday on July 12th as I'm recording this video. This is a solid test for any fighter in this division who they want to try to track to the belt. Let's start with Austen Lane. Before it was Dontel Mays, they cut Dontel Mays. Austen Lane is taking full responsibility for being the intro gatekeeper for debuting heavyweights and 205ers who are trying out the new division. I'll also have photos of the rankings and champions right there. Whenever we're discussing a guy like Austen Lane, it's kind of useless to discuss whether or not he wins any of those fights because... Next fighter. Michał Oleksiejczuk. Crazy loss streak through 2024. It felt like this dude did nothing but lose that year, and that was actually the case. He's with the Fighting Nerds now, and that's why it makes him more of a worthwhile gatekeeper than he was before. Because if you do want to fight against Michał Oleksiejczuk, before you could just say that you beat Michał Oleksiejczuk, which a lot of people have done up until this point, but now you get to say that you beat a Fighting Nerd, and he may get better to challenge higher tiers of prospects in this division. It's hard to gauge with the win over Cedric Dumas. Cedric Dumas needs to lock in dog crate boy. In his next fight, I think we'll be able to more fairly evaluate his skill set and how far he's come with his new camp. Gerald Meershaert is our number 23 placement. I thought GM3 would be champion in 2021. Right after he lost to Khamzat Chimaev, he got knocked out so fast in that fight. So I paid attention to his next match to see if the same thing would happen again. And he just started winning a bunch, and I was like, wait. And then Bruno Silva has a classic with Alex Pereira, and concurrently he fights Gerald Meershaert and he loses by submission. So I'm like, oh, we're so back. I thought the world of Bruno Silva before he went on his own loss streak. Gerald Meershaert then shows us how much he's not an actual contender and fights against Joe Pyfer and Andre Petroski. He wins against Brian Barberena and then gets a better win against Edmund Shabazian. And I'm like, hold on, you guys. So whenever he gets the opportunity to fight X1 champion Rainer de Ritter, I'm like, wait, if he wins this fight, Gerald Meershaert title run starts now. And I held hope alive just because of the way that the fight with Malikin went. And for some reason, I equated Malikin in my head with Gerald Meershaert from the perspective of skill and ability. So I had to watch my heart get smashed into 6 million pieces all over the floor while I watched Gerald Meershaert get subbed by Rainer de Ritter in the third round of that fight that I thought he was going to win for free. Little did I know that he would go on to lose a decision to Brad Tavares. This dude may be done. That's why he's at one of the lower placements here. But before, he was a pretty solid gatekeeper. He was the first sort of real test for a new grappler at 185. Him and Andre Muniz play the same game, but I always favor the way that Gerald Meershaert did it a bit better. Drew Dober at number 22. This is a fighter who started giving up losses at a time where I never expected it to happen. I did not foresee him getting knocked out by Matt Frevola at all. And this was really close to whenever Matt Frevola had been sparked out cold really quickly by Terrence McKinney as well. So for him to display that level of power against a fighter like Drew Dober, who has a notoriously good chin, it really came out of left field for me. Drew Dober gets into insanely violent fights. He was Michael Chandler before Michael Chandler. In a similar fashion as IQ gets him into trouble, but it's hard to not make mistakes because he's getting match made with power bombers in this division who can so easily put people's lights out. His last two opponents were Gene Silva and Manuel Torres. Before then it was Renato Moicano, who is a master of game planning. I'm not sure if that's even true because what was the Beneil Dariush fight? But my point is, in general, unless you are a good game planning grappler with solid jiu-jitsu and wrestling, you need to pack some serious power and have good cardio in order to win a fight with Drew Dober. Because at least through the year 2022, if you were going power for power with Drew Dober and you didn't have the gas to keep up with him, he would knock you out. That's exactly what happened in the Terrence McKinney fight. This is a solid middle-of-the-road contender still. Even though he's on a 3-loss streak, beating him still means something. And the fact that his chin has been getting broken is not a testament to his lack of durability. It's just the fact that he's been getting match made with great strikers with massive power. For Vola, Gene Silva, and Torres each hit very hard, thus they were able to knock him out. This guy's made out of some pretty tough stuff. Solid number 22 pick. Ode Osbourne at number 21. This is a fighter who's fun because he can and will be brutally KO'd, but he's a good test for new prospects because he drops many of his opponents. He doesn't go without having his moments in these fights. We saw this against Ronaldo Rodriguez. He had Ronaldo Rodriguez hitting the chicken dance, and we had to see what happens whenever he has to face real adversity. Ronaldo Rodriguez just opted to spam wrestle, and that ended up winning him the fight. But in the instance of Luis Garul, who came out with no strategy and winning against Ode Osbourne, tried to wrestle a little bit, but in the boxing was getting heated up. You can't stay ahead of Osbourne for very long if that's the type of fight that you're fighting with him, and you're going to get knocked out. And that's the reason why I feel like he deserves this spot. If you're a specialist, or you're a fighter who's good at something, you have great power, your boxing is great, you have good jiu-jitsu, your wrestling is really nice, you can find a finish over Ode Osbourne. You can knock him out. You can sub him. Before Ronaldo Rodriguez, he had only been losing 2 finishes. He's a very electric fighter for the fact that he doesn't have the best record in the UFC. He's worth keeping around to test these new young fighters. If I'm Dana White and I want to take a chance on a regional prospect at flyweight, have him fight Ode Osbourne. If he doesn't deserve to be in the UFC, we're going to be scooping him up from the canvas within 5 minutes. Number 20 is Davey Grant, Muay Thai Minecraft skeleton. Listen for the noise right now. He wins from being clever traditionally, but he can get outworked. We saw Daniel Marcos do this. We saw Adrian Yanez do this, which was a very cheeky split decision. Marlon Vera is a textbook example of this. Davey Grant was chipping on the outside at Marlon Vera and then got in close and started trying to work Muay Thai like elbows and knees. And Marlon Vera stood hard and ate a couple of these elbows and then just got angry and frustrated by the fact that Davey Grant was trying to use such techniques, and then started throwing his own downwards elbows like this in the clinch and open up a massive gash on Davey Grant's forehead. So he'll style on you. If you are a guy who is one-dimensional, or you don't have an incredible amount of violence to rely on, he can beat you in a skill-for-skill match. He did this to Ramon Tavares, but if you are an insanely violent bastard, you can do serious damage to Davey Grant, because at the end of the day, he is kind of just an old man. But being that he is an old man, he does assassinate other old guys, Rafael Assunção in that reverse triangle choke, and other fresh-faced prospects with no swag as well. You have to have some type of bag or skill set in order to win a fight over Davey Grant. Alonzo Menifield at number 19. I've actually gained respect for Alonzo Menifield. I'll say it. I respect Alonzo Menifield. He's low-key the boogeyman of 205. This is our prospect buster. He does the same thing every time, which is spam wrestle and work some really uncoordinated looking boxing at range that it looks kind of scary, and it's pretty effective for as goofy as it appears. At the end of the day, any output beats no output at all, and that's how he's beating a lot of these guys. He's exhausting them by wrestling and forcing these grappling sequences, and then at range, he's doing more than them. His record's pretty spotless too. Granted, he hasn't been given the hardest fights. He's bounced back really well from consecutive KO losses to Carlos Ulberg and Azamat Mirzakhanov. I remember the Carlos Ulberg knockout. It was reminiscent of Dominic Reyes' knockout over Dustin Jacoby. It was a very similar sequence. In order to be a prospect at light heavyweight, you have to go through Alonzo Menifield, and dudes like Umar Sy and Julius Walker lately have been proving that that's not that easy of a task. Damn, I got the Pinterest logo in the screenshot. Oh, that one too. Daniel Rodriguez at number 18. The UFC has kept him on life support so that he can continue to gatekeep. After 2 wins, he's been primed to take a matchup with someone the UFC needs to enter the rankings where he gets boomed on. Ideally, he would have won the Neal Magny fight before they scheduled him with Ian Gary because they were just having him fight this dude to get a knockout for hype. And he ended up scoring it, which was cool. Ian Gary's striking 2 years ago was so fun and interesting to watch. Now it's just, I don't know. Daniel Rodriguez is going to fight with Kevin Holland at UFC 318. He probably gets sparked in this fight, but as far as the future with Kevin Holland, he's not per se a gatekeeper just because they repeatedly keep on trying to make Kevin Holland into a prospect and it just doesn't work. They don't treat him like a gatekeeper. They keep on giving him tracks to get somewhere in these new divisions, whether it's 185 or 170. It's like with gatekeepers, there's a refractory period with whenever you can cash their tickets to get other people hype. Because if you just get the same guy knocked out over and over again, unless he's been ex-champion or something, it starts to not mean anything after a while. So whenever these dudes do go on these loss streaks, maybe they had, again, intended for Daniel Rodriguez to beat Neal Magny or Kelvin Gastellum. Let's get him an Alex Morono that he guaranteed beats, and let's get him a Santiago Ponzinibbio that he probably wins again. So now he's ripe for the picking for Kevin Holland, who needs something to do, and so that he wants to take easy fights. Niko Price at number 17, legendary gatekeeper this guy is. Prospects who fight with Price, they either get an early finish or they have their worst performance ever. Jacoby Smith saved himself from going to decision with Niko Price and potentially losing the fight by getting a hold on things in the second round and subbing his ass. Niko met a wizard and was given the magical chin bone of infinite exhaustion. Whenever you properly rock Niko Price, I don't know what it is. You see the energy and stamina leaving the fighter's body that just dealt the damage to Niko. Unless you are able to knock him out then afterwards, which there's a high likelihood that you are going to be able to, he's going to make the fight really dirty and you're not going to get a clean highlight out of it. It always happens after he gets rocked. This fighter is so funny. Niko Price presents a fight for welterweights who aren't losers but have been losing, or a new guy. And I guess he makes a pretty solid retirement fight too. Renato Moicano at number 16. He always has been better on the mic than he has been actually fighting in the octagon. Renato Moicano did his best work behind the scenes as a dude who nobody really cared about and who was free to work independently of the podcast or the gimmicks with the can't afford to lose stuff. Back whenever he was his slept on underrated contender without a platform, wins over fighters like Drew Dober and stuff, they meant something because he had that hunger. I feel like he's lost the hunger. He can't afford to lose now, my brother. He can't afford to lose. So like Moicano from, we'll say 2021 on through 2024. This was like peak Renato Moicano. He even had to take a little bit of time off for an injury, it looks like. But they made him too fat. He owns too much podcast equipment now. To some degree, I still feel like he can't afford to lose. But it's only going to be to guys like Jalen Turner, or like Jai Herbert, or like Alexander Hernandez. Whenever it's a high-profile contender fight, like Rafael Dos Anjos, or like Rafael Fiziev, he not winning that. And a loss to Beneil Dariush staples Renato Moicano to the 10 through 15 position in the rankings with no opportunity for mobility, because that would have been his chance to move up. It would have been to smoke Beneil Dariush. At that point, you could have justified a matchup like Dan Hooker if the performance was good enough, but there's nowhere for him to go except for where he is currently. I forget that Aleksandar Rakic exists every so often, and he's done just enough with winning fights against time-specific opponents to still be relevant from past accomplishments. What I mean by this is Thiago Santos in 2021, that's just a name. He also beat Anthony Smith in 2020, which for all intents and purposes is a pretty good win. So going into a fight with Jan Blachowicz and also a fight with Yuri Prochazka after the Jan Blachowicz fight, which ended in an injury that took place in the third round, people thought that he may come back and be able to do better against Yuri Prochazka and potentially win that fight too, and he nearly did. It looked like he was in the lead and he was working the low kick and he was landing his straight punches well. And then Yuri just kind of does that thing he does. Magomed Yuri and Jan Blachowicz each owe Aleksandar Rakic a beer because he gave them each a solid ranked win whenever they really needed one, following losses where they needed any win over a top-ranked contender to get back into the title conversation. And these losing performances on his behalf, they weren't poor enough to convince the viewer base that he's horrible. So number 15 is Aleksandar Rakic. Number 14 is a new notable gatekeeper in the UFC. This guy has really rose to prominence over the fact that he's beaten Peyton Talbot and Cody Garbrandt in consecutive wins. Over the course of a few months, he's transformed into a King Von level threat at 135. His track record is also really, he's fought with a bunch of mountain grapplers. He took on both of the Nurmagomedovs in the UFC at the 135 division, and he beat one of them, Saeed, but Loke Dog also did the same thing, Vinicius Oliveira, but Barcelos was doing it before it was cool. Recently, Barcelos has been the most prominent outside of the rankings gatekeeper at 135, and he's been mincing up these American strikers that the UFC is trying to push into the rankings. And aside from this, he's only losing to legit contenders. Maybe not all of them ranked, but Victor Henry has been around for a long time. He has longevity in the UFC. But we can excuse losses to Kyler Phillips and Nurmagomedov, even if one of them was by KO. The clip was pretty funny. Amongst all ranked contenders, probably doesn't beat any of the guys in the top 15, but if there was a number 16 position, maybe it would belong to Raoni Barcelos. Neil Magny at number 13, he became goated after he beat Mike Malott in Canada. This dude has more fights in the UFC than I have teeth in my mouth. He will fight with anyone, Neil Magny. He's only less legendary after beating Mike Malott because of how many times he's been chinned since this glorious W. Michael Morales and Carlos Prates both got him up out of there. Round 1 or early round stoppages, which is always a risk up for him whenever we're dealing with the new era of welterweights. They're very dangerous. But for the fact that he has so many wins over people who should have beaten him, Neil Magny has beaten Geoff Neal and also Mike Malott. He has a win over D-Rod too, and D-Rod was, I'm not sure what his trajectory was whenever he first came along. Lawler, Johnny Hendricks, whenever that meant more. Guy's a legend. Number 12 is Kelvin Gastellum, who isn't allowed to get KO'd, and that's the reason why he has this position on the list. Kelvin Gastellum is a tricky fighter because he has classics with people who he isn't given a chance against. He has classics with everyone. It doesn't matter what their skill level is. He goes to war with every single fighter that he's match made with. And it's remarkable how he fought D-Rod the same exact way that he fought Israel Adesanya. And the way that he fought Joe Pyfer as well. It was the same approaches he takes to every single fight. He's really consistent. And through this consistency, we know what we're getting every single time with Kelvin Gastellum, and how a fighter wins against him, or if they do win at all. That then allows for us to calculate how well they're going to do afterwards, because with Kelvin Gastellum, you're always getting the same product. Cody Durden at number 11, he gets chinned every day at 4 p.m. on schedule, and lately some really bad stuff has been happening to him. He likely can't even remember his own phone number from the brain damage that he sustained in his UFC career. Late 2023 to right now for Cody Durden probably feels like he just had a conch shell to his ear the whole time. One thing I will credit him for is that he never shied away from challenging a new prospect for his ranking whenever he did have one, and then afterwards he was fighting Joshua Van and Jose Ochoa in back-to-back fights. This dude doesn't care about living at all. Before then, it was Tagir Ulanbekov, who had Khabib in his corner, and then Bruno Silva, who had hype at this time and was very dangerous. He's still dangerous. We just know how he competes against guys like Manel Kape and Joshua Van, who are more dangerous. Cody Durden is the flyweight top 15 starter pack. If you're a guy who's good enough to immediately enter the rankings, Cody Durden is the dude who you fight. Alright, breaking into the top 10 now. Geoff Neal is going to be our first pick. He takes the scariest fights and doesn't get finished. This guy has not been finished. Submitted by Rakhmonov in the standing rear naked choke. That was cool. But aside from this man is only getting decisioned. We haven't seen him get chinned before. Rocked, yeah, sure, but not chinned. And he's rocked Shavkat. This is a test of toughness versus a pure skill matchup for prospects. Yeah, you can be good, but Geoff Neal is going to hit walkdowns. You have to be able to react to them or have that dog in you so you're not just going to concave whenever the pressure is on. Geoff Neal replaces Wonderboy since he's 42 years old as the pure striker gatekeeper of 170. Everyone else in the running is a prospect or a contender that can still make a run for the belt. It's not fair to say that Wonderboy is going to be replaced by Michael Morales or Carlos Prates because those guys are young and they can still figure it out. It could be argued that Michael Page could replace Wonderboy at this position, but Geoff Neal is at more of a competing age, and I like him better to challenge guys who are kickboxers because he's going to crowd the kicking range since he is a good boxer. And if you are a boxer, let's see how Carlos Prates boxes with a guy like Geoff Neal, who has good fundamentals and knockout power, who will be able to catch him lacking if he doesn't come correct. Geoff Neal only loses to the elite and also Neil Magny in general. So you gotta be something and somebody if you want to beat this dude. And if you're not, he's gonna whoop you. He's gonna whoop you decent. Number 9, Volkan Oezdemir. This is my violent unk. Volkan Oezdemir, he will always beat a contender that the UFC wants to push if they aren't ready for a hard fight. Johnny Walker, Paul Craig, Aleksandar Rakic, Bogdan Guskov. These are just to name a few on his record. He's been around for a little bit though. Since he is so violent, he's a good debut test for fighters like Yuri, who just want to fight. If they can't go violence for violence with Volkan Oezdemir, there's a good chance it gets sparked out. And you have to be very tactful with who you give. There's a reason why Mingying Zhang is fighting Johnny Walker in China and not Volkan Oezdemir. Because if you do put a guy like Volkan Oezdemir on the card with Minying Zhang, he may spoil the occasion because he is that type of gatekeeper where he is not doing anything to Magomed Ankalaev. We've seen it. It happened. He doesn't win that fight. But you already know he's going to beat most of these lesser contenders, and he finishes a lot of these fights that he's winning. And his losses aren't usually that embarrassing. Even the knockout to Yuri, he was in there swinging with that guy, and he just got knocked out. It happens, and he bounced back perfectly from it. He even lost again and still is relevant in this division. Like Kelvin Gastellum, Volkan Oezdemir is very consistent, and a win over him has always meant the same thing. Even his recent loss to Carlos Ulberg, I don't think diminishes the value of his stock that greatly. Number 8 is Charles Johnson. I'll always say good things about this dude online because he was the dude who KO'd Joshua Van. And 3 of 5 of his last opponents were undefeated, and he beat 2 of them. Charles Johnson is the hardest pure striking test for the average flyweight prospect to pass. He is a massive KO threat. You have to grapple him. And it's tricky because he's really good at surviving ground sequences where you may be able to score a finish, and he's good at reversing positions and dominating there too. He's scrappy in general, so if you do beat him, then you immediately graduate from a prospect in this division to a proper contender. The guy knocked out Joshua Van. Michael Chandler at number 7. Michael Chandler is a neck ab boy. Michael Chandler gave us his best rounds in 1 fight that he won and 4 fights that he lost. I don't even want to go as far as to say that the Tony Ferguson were some of the best rounds that he ever had in the UFC. Yeah, the highlight was cool, but he was posted on all fours like Peyton Talbot in round 1 because he got dropped by, I would think it was a jab by Tony Ferguson. Michael Chandler is going to be forever doomed to fail by his infantile fight IQ. The significance of beating Michael Chandler comes from what he could be or what he almost did at 155 in moments where he dropped Charles Oliveira, or for all the moments where he rocked Gaethje in that fight and didn't finish. The very end of the Oliveira rematch where he could have won the fight and didn't. Some think Paddy could beat Islam or Topuria based off of the skills that he showcased in his fight with Chandler, and that should just be a testament to the level of gatekeeper that Michael Chandler is. At a certain point, beating this dude was like winning a fight against Optimus Prime. Johnny Walker at number 6. Johnny Walker, he gets knocked out by thinking about cartoon violence. The easiest way to build a new contender at light heavyweight is to have him KO Johnny Walker. Magomed Ankalaev needed 1 sleepy KO clip over Johnny Walker in order to qualify for title contention. It was the same story for Jamal Hill as well. Volkan Oezdemir could have been making a run towards the title if he would have concurrently won his fight with Carlos Ulberg after knocking out Johnny Walker. In my opinion, there's no hope for him having a career resurgence. Anthony Smith was the only fighter that he would have been able to win against. If Walker KOs Minying Zhang, I will eat the shirt that I'm wearing right now. This shirt, I'll go cook it in a pan with some butter and salt, and I will eat it with a knife and a fork. Leon Edwards at number 5. Nothing left for Leon Edwards to accomplish in this division. He doesn't want to gatekeep either because he's ducking Michael Morales. Whenever you think about it, he's really the only surviving member of the late 2010s welterweight class. And he set this group downfall in motion by KOing Usman. And he potentially got lucky here too, because look at this resume, man. It really hurts my head to look at this guy's record, right? Get this. Rafael dos Anjos win. I guess it's not bad. It was 2019, right? Before then, Gunnar Nelson. Before then, Donald Cerrone. Donald Cerrone, unanimous decision. No contest against Bilal Muhammad. He poked his eye, acted like he won the fight. Didn't win the fight. He poked his eye. Nate Diaz happens. He wins the fight. It was not sound, though. He nearly got finished at the end. That gets him into a title shot with Kamaru, where he's dominated for 4 rounds. Rips this crazy high kick that chins Kamaru and then wins the rematch where he actually looks pretty good in that fight. Colby Covington again looks to be injured in his fight with Leon Edwards. Loses the fight. Gets into a real match with Bilal Muhammad where there is no eye pokes. And he loses that one. Gets subbed by Sean Brady. So what you have is a guy who earned hype to his name based off of accolades that he earned over dudes who would have no seat at the table in the current standing of the welterweight division. What's left for him to do except for to get chinned? Justin Gaethje at number 4. He's close to retirement anyways. He gatekeeps world titles and number 1 contenderships. I feel like it's dudes at the UFC sitting around, and any single time that they don't have a better option for any belt at 155, they just say, what's Justin Gaethje doing? At least they did from 2025 all the way up until now. If there was any type of belt, an interim title, an actual title, the BMF belt, Justin Gaethje has always been involved in championship matches in the UFC, and that's because he is the human highlight. But he's also demonstrated the full range of his skills 5 years ago in a fight with Khabib. He was exposed for having really bad grappling in this fight. Before, he had taken stand-up matches in the UFC. He won many of them and lost a couple to Dustin Poirier and Eddie Alvarez. Happens, right? That Khabib fight demonstrated that this dude had no jiu-jitsu. And so whenever he gets an opportunity to fight with Charles Oliveira again, nobody expected Charles Oliveira to come out throwing hammers like that, but nobody was surprised at the fact that this fight ended by submission in round 1. It's just the means of getting to the choke was a bit differently set up than we all envisioned it in our head from Charles. I didn't think he could hurt Justin Gaethje as bad as he was able to. But then again, I didn't think Max Holloway would have been able to do what he did either. 2 wins over Fiziev in a trilogy is like, I don't know. I don't really know what to make of that. It certainly doesn't qualify him to be calling for a title shot as vigorously as he is right now. But until he retires, he's always going to be in the mix, top 5 ranking in the lightweight division. Justin Gaethje will always be one of those guys here who will be putting on good fights and taking important matchups with other contenders. Number 3 is Brandon Royval. We just watched him get beat up by Joshua Van at UFC 319. I'm going to just call it what it is. It was a very close fight, but at the very end, he was getting beat up whenever he started getting knee stomped. And it sucks because Brandon Royval, he can't catch a break. He's been fighting the best prospects in this division and winning whenever he wasn't supposed to, like in his fight against Tatsuro Taira. Even in that rematch against Brandon Moreno, the first time that they fought, he got finished in the first round. He bounced back and he won both of those fights. And so he finally catches a break whenever they promised the title shot to him against the best contender that he has ever fought that ended up beating him, Joshua Van. So for the fact that he can't beat the champion and that he's lost to a guy who is championship level in a number 1 contendership position, who may very well go get the belt, I would liken him to a fighter like Cory Sandhagen. Because if you look at those rankings, he likely beats most of the people from 1 through 15. It's just not Joshua Van, and it's just not Alexandre Pantoja. Number 2 is going to be the Sandman himself, Cory Sandhagen. And this dude has been so close so many times. So close yet so far. His loss to Aljamain Sterling happened, and whenever it did, I was very new to the sport, and I didn't view it as very consequential. I didn't understand who I was watching fight in that moment. That was a big setback for him, losing to Aljamain Sterling that way, and it was very fast too. And then he comes out and he challenges TJ Dillashaw for number 1 contendership. Loses the fight. TJ Dillashaw off the couch, man, with a bunch of shoulder stuff going on. Sets him back a lot. An interim title fight was fought between Peter Yan and Cory Sandhagen. Peter Yan beats up Cory Sandhagen. That's now 3 losses to championship level fighters. It's like, man, that really sucks. Because he's supposed to be the new age of bantamweights, and he is. He's a very dynamic striker, a good grappler. It's just, he can't make it work against these dudes who have touched gold before. But against all the rest of them, he looks like a superstar. Song Yadong, Marlon Vera, Rob Font consecutively, and then, again, number 1 contender fight, Umar Nurmagomedov. All you have to do, Cory Sandhagen, is win this fight, then you get to challenge Merab. It's going to be you and not him. And he doesn't do it. And they fast-tracked Umar to the belt. And Cory Sandhagen had been incumbent for the number 1 contendership for so long, it's just he keeps losing. It's in his control, but he just repeatedly falls short of opportunities to challenge for the titles in the past, at least. Now he's a number 4 contender, and I think Dana White has said that he's going to get the title shot. Still, he must defeat Merab to become champion of this weight class. And in the past, we've seen that the difference between him and the fighters that he loses to is that championship level, which he hasn't shown to be on. This is the gatekeeper of gatekeepers, if not for our number 1 pick, which is going to be Ciryl Gane at heavyweight. Ciryl Gane is the number 1 gatekeeper in the UFC. Imagine, this man has the potential to be gifted 3 title shots in 3 years. What did he do to earn them? Let's look. He won an interim title off of Derek Lewis. But to be fair, nobody had really knocked him out like that. And then he beat Tai Tuivasa. 3.5 stars in UFC 5, Tai Tuivasa. And let's not even talk about the title fights, bro. Francis Ngannou, he made Francis Ngannou look like Khamzat Chimaev out there. And John Jones, he made John Jones look like a wizard because he got him onto that stack guard guillotine and it looked like he made him tap with the power of positive thinking. And so we have a win over Sergey Spivak, which, are we even counting those? And then a win over Alexander Volkov that he did sketch out with a broken foot, so I guess we give him a pass for that. In general, I deem Ciryl Gane to be a fighter that people inflate the skill level of just to justify title shots that he doesn't deserve. And he hasn't had to work lately. He did the bulk of his grinding from 2019 through 2022 because this division needs heavyweights, and it needs fighters like him. He's a full-form heavyweight fighter with Muay Thai kickboxing acumen. And the reason why he keeps on getting to these belt opportunities is it's dangerous to have him fight other contenders in the top 5 who you may be grooming to be title challengers like Almeida. Because if Ciryl Gane beats Almeida and then Ciryl Gane goes and challenges Aspinall and gets knocked out, then you've then lost a title contender. Instead of just having Ciryl Gane go and fight and see how that goes, and then having Almeida come up afterwards. He's the gatekeeper final boss because he treasure guards a belt that isn't his. He's likely going to get the next title shot at heavyweight. He fights for titles like a defending champion. And that, like, he just opts to not fight for his belts whenever he's not in title situations. Because he's always in them. It's him versus either the current champion or another guy for a vacant title. Dude is like Smaug the Dragon from The Hobbit. Just has a lair full of belts that aren't his, and he just chills on top of them. So yes, those are going to be my picks, guys. Thank you so much for the support that you guys have been showing to the content. I greatly appreciate all of you fellas for tapping in with my stuff every day. We're about 2 more days off from seeing some fights. It's been 12 days since we've seen a live UFC event. I'm kind of jonesing to see someone get knocked out. So in time, my brothers, please have a great day. Please do like, comment, and subscribe as well.